Winter had come early to the Eastern Front in late 1943. I was a German soldier, part of the Wehrmacht, fighting in a land where the cold seemed to freeze, not just the ground but our very spirits. The Soviet Union had been relentless, and we were now entrenched in a bitter struggle for every inch of territory. The landscape was a bleak expanse of snow and ice, with dark, skeletal trees standing like silent witnesses to the conflict. Our positions were barely more than a collection of muddy trenches and makeshift bunkers, hastily constructed to offer some protection from the harsh elements and the enemy's fire. The cold was our constant companion, gnawing at our bones and making even the simplest tasks a grueling ordeal. The constant shelling and gunfire were a backdrop to our daily existence. Each day, we faced the reality of Soviet offensives with growing fatigue and diminishing morale. Supplies were scarce, and the rations we received were often meager. We relied on our comrades and our will to hold the line, but the conditions wore us down. One particularly frigid morning, as we huddled in our trench, we received orders for a counteroffensive. The Soviets had pushed hard, and we were to reclaim a strategic position that had been lost. The thought of moving out into the open, with the biting wind and the ever-present threat of enemy fire, filled us with dread. But there was no choice. Orders were orders. As we prepared for the assault, the sky was a dull gray, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and frost. We advanced through the snow, the ground crunching beneath our boots. The Soviet positions were well fortified, and as we approached, we were met with a fierce volley of gunfire. The noise was deafening, and the snow around us erupted in sprays of dirt and ice. The battle was intense. We fought with a desperation born of the realization that we were not just fighting for territory, but for our very survival. The Soviet forces were relentless, their counterattacks as fierce as our own assaults. We used every weapon at our disposal: rifles, grenades, and machine guns. The fight was brutal, a chaotic mix of gunfire, shouts, and the occasional scream of a wounded comrade. Amidst the chaos, I witnessed acts of courage and compassion. One of my fellow soldiers, despite being severely wounded, managed to drag another injured comrade to safety, shielding him from further fire. In that moment, amidst the madness, there was a glimmer of humanity that made the war seem even more tragic. The fighting continued throughout the day and into the night. The cold was unrelenting, and we were exhausted, both physically and mentally. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield, we finally managed to reclaim the position we had been ordered to take. The cost was high. Many of our comrades had fallen, and the remaining survivors were left to mourn their loss. In the aftermath, as we stood amidst the wreckage and the fallen, the reality of our situation began to sink in. We had won the battle, but it was a hollow victory. The war was taking its toll on us, and the constant strain of fighting in such harsh conditions was wearing us down. The Eastern Front had become a symbol of the futility and brutality of the conflict, and every victory seemed overshadowed by the cost of achieving it. The days that followed were a blur of cold and conflict. We continued to fight, but the sense of hopelessness was growing. The harsh winter, the unrelenting enemy, and the ever-present loss of comrades weighed heavily on us. The war was far from over, and the Eastern Front remained a place where every day was a struggle for survival. Looking back, I realized that the Eastern Front had changed me. The idealism and sense of duty that had driven me to join the army had been replaced by a grim awareness of the true cost of war. The experiences I endured on that frozen battlefield left scars that would last a lifetime, a reminder of the harsh realities of conflict and the human cost of fighting in such a brutal theater of war.